My name's Lauren Harris. I'm 25, a strategist, and up until 6 months ago, I worked at Argon & Chase, one of those towering firms with glass offices, modern art in the lobby, and egos bigger than the skyscraper it lived in. I used to believe in hard work. I mean, I still do, but back then, I believed it was the only thing that mattered. That if I put in the hours, kept my head down, and over-delivered, someone would eventually notice. That all the skipped birthdays, canceled dates, and 3 a.m. pitch decks would add up to something real. Something I could hold in my hands, like respect. Like a raise. Like a future. It was a Thursday when everything came to a head. We had just wrapped a major pitch for Neuron Technologies. You've probably heard of them. They're the rising star in AI medical diagnostics. Everyone in the office knew it was a massive opportunity. If we landed them, it could mean a multi-year, multi-million-dollar partnership. And I had practically birthed the pitch. The research, the concept, the execution strategy, it was my work. I'd stayed until midnight 3 nights in a row polishing every word, every graph, every potential risk. Derek, my boss, had popped in now and then, mostly to skim slides and offer vague, infuriating feedback like, make it pop more. During the meeting, I sat quietly while Derek stood at the front of the boardroom, presenting my strategy with that smug, effortless charm he was known for. I watched him point to the customer journey map I'd designed, the campaign rollout timeline I'd perfected, and I felt this weird combination of pride and nausea. Pride because the client loved it. Nausea because Derek never once looked my way. Still, I held on to hope. After the client left and the applause died down, I waited for everyone to clear out. My heart was thudding in my chest like a warning bell as I walked down the hall to Derek's office. I knocked lightly. He didn't even look up. Yeah. I stepped in, closed the door. I wanted to talk to you about something. Now he looked up, finally, giving me the kind of look you'd give someone asking to borrow your pen. Okay. I swallowed the nerves building in my throat. I think it's time we revisit my role here. I've been leading strategy on our biggest accounts, and I believe I've earned a raise. And a title adjustment. There was a beat of silence. Then he leaned back in his chair and laughed. Not a polite laugh. Not a let-me-down easy laugh. An actual laugh. Like what I just said was the funniest thing he'd heard all week. You're serious? He asked, grinning. You've been here what, 13 months? That's adorable. Adorable. That word rang in my ears. My jaw clenched, my fingers curled into fists at my sides. I wanted to scream. Or cry. Or both. But I didn't do either. I just stood there, nodding slowly like I was absorbing the lesson. He waved a hand, already looking back at his screen. We'll revisit in a year. Maybe. For now, focus on building your experience. Experience? I had built a strategy that could pull in $10 million in annual revenue, and I was being told to wait another year to be considered? I didn't say anything else. I walked out of his office, grabbed my coat, and kept walking. Past my desk, past the elevator, past the receptionist's startled face. I didn't even stop to clear my inbox. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, that laugh echoing in my mind like a song stuck on loop. The rage wasn't what surprised me. It was the clarity that came with it. Derek didn't respect me. And he never would. So I started making calls. Not to friends. To clients. Quiet, simple conversations with people I'd built real relationships with. I didn't poach or pitch. I just said the truth. I was starting something of my own, and if they were ever curious, I'd be around. 4 of them called me back. One said, "We were only staying because of you." I didn't sleep the next night either, but for a different reason. By the end of the month, I had a registered LLC, a tiny office in a shared workspace, and contracts worth $40 million on my desk. All because a man laughed in my face and called me adorable. The Monday after I walked out, I didn't go back. No dramatic resignation. No farewell emails. I let the silence speak for itself. My company, still just a name on paperwork and a vision in my head, was born in my apartment. The desk was an old IKEA table. The office chair? A hand-me-down from my college roommate. I didn't even have a logo, just a deep, buzzing clarity that I would never work for someone like Derek again. I named it Altera, Latin for the other. Because that's what I'd always been at Argon & Chase. The other voice in the room. The other mind behind the work. Now, I'd be the only one. I started calling it the escape project in my head, but I never said that out loud. I kept it small at first. Just me, a Google Doc, and a burner phone where I fielded calls from clients who wanted to know where I'd gone. The first one to make it official was Rosalind from Neuron Technologies. "I'm going to be honest, Lauren," she said, her voice sharp and direct as always. "We liked your ideas, not Derek's delivery. Are you still willing to run with them?" My heart jumped. Yes. I'd be honored. She didn't even hesitate. "Then let's talk scope and budget." Just like that, I had my first official contract. My hands were trembling as I signed it. It felt unreal. Like I was pretending to be someone braver, more capable than I actually was. But the ink dried anyway. And then came the second client. Then a third. By the second week, I was on Zoom calls at all hours, running analytics at midnight, typing proposals while eating cold pizza on my floor. There was no glamour, no sleek office space, no polished website, just grit. But I was happy. Or at least too wired to feel miserable. Of course, the silence didn't last long. By week 3, Derek finally noticed. He called. Twice. Then he emailed. "Can we talk?" he wrote, like we were old friends catching up, not a boss who'd laughed me out of his office. I didn't reply. Then came the real fallout. The firm's senior accounts director, Anna, messaged me out of nowhere. "What's going on? Did you really take Neuron?" "They're saying it's a misunderstanding." I wanted to tell her it wasn't. That I hadn't taken anything. I'd earned it. I'd built those relationships through trust, not power. But I didn't explain. I just replied. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a choice. I didn't owe them more than that. The next few weeks were chaos. Legal letters started showing up. All bark, no bite. They knew they couldn't stop the clients from walking away. These weren't stolen accounts. They were people who chose to follow the strategist they actually trusted. I thought I'd feel vindicated. Triumphant. Instead, I felt something quieter. Steadier. I was finally building something for myself. But it wasn't all smooth. I barely slept. I didn't know how to invoice properly or write contracts. I cried once, okay, maybe 3 times, when my laptop crashed during a pitch rehearsal. Still I kept going. Because something had shifted in me. That smirk, Derek's little laugh when I asked for what I'd earned, had flipped a switch I couldn't unflip. I wasn't working toward someone else's approval anymore. I was working toward my own power. And I was just getting started. The Monday after I walked out, I didn't go back. No dramatic resignation. No farewell emails. I let the silence speak for itself. My company, still just a name on paperwork and a vision in my head, was born in my apartment. The desk was an old IKEA table. The office chair? A hand-me-down from my college roommate. I didn't even have a logo, just a deep, buzzing clarity that I would never work for someone like Derek again. I named it Altera, Latin for the other. Because that's what I'd always been at Argonne and Chase. The other voice in the room. The other mind behind the work. Now, I'd be the only one. I started calling it the escape project in my head, but I never said that out loud. I kept it small at first. Just me, a Google Doc, and a burner phone where I fielded calls from clients who wanted to know where I'd gone. The first one to make it official was Rosalind from Neuron Technologies. "I'm going to be honest, Lauren," she said, her voice sharp and direct as always. "We liked your ideas, not Derek's delivery. Are you still willing to run with them?" My heart jumped. Yes. I'd be honored. She didn't even hesitate. "Then let's talk scope and budget." Just like that, I had my first official contract. My hands were trembling as I signed it. It felt unreal. Like I was pretending to be someone braver, more capable than I actually was. But the ink dried anyway. And then came the second client. Then a third. By the second week, I was on Zoom calls at all hours, running analytics at midnight, typing proposals while eating cold pizza on my floor. There was no glamour, no sleek office space, no polished website, just grit. But I was happy. Or at least too wired to feel miserable. Of course, the silence didn't last long. By week 3, Derek finally noticed. He called. Twice. Then he emailed. Can we talk? He wrote, like we were old friends catching up, not a boss who'd laughed me out of his office. I didn't reply. Then came the real fallout. The firm's senior accounts director, Anna, messaged me out of nowhere. What's going on? Did you really take Neuron? They're saying it's a misunderstanding. I wanted to tell her it wasn't. That I hadn't taken anything. I'd earned it. I'd built those relationships through trust, not power. But I didn't explain. I just replied. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a choice. I didn't owe them more than that. The next few weeks were chaos. Legal letters started showing up. All bark, no bite. They knew they couldn't stop the clients from walking away. These weren't stolen accounts. They were people who chose to follow the strategist they actually trusted. I thought I'd feel vindicated. Triumphant. Instead, I felt something quieter. Steadier. I was finally building something for myself. But it wasn't all smooth. I barely slept. I didn't know how to invoice properly or write contracts. I cried once, okay, maybe 3 times, when my laptop crashed during a pitch rehearsal. Still I kept going. Because something had shifted in me. That smirk, Derek's little laugh when I asked for what I'd earned, had flipped a switch I couldn't unflip. I wasn't working toward someone else's approval anymore. I was working toward my own power. And I was just getting started. The email showed up on a Monday morning. Subject line. Coffee? I stared at it for a long time. The sender? Derek Collins. It had been nearly 4 months since I walked out of Argonne and Chase without a word. Since he'd laughed at me, belittled me, and dismissed everything I brought to the table with that single word. Adorable. Now here he was. Casual subject, no punctuation. Like we were colleagues who had simply lost touch. I didn't respond. 2 days later, a second email came. Subject. Just 10 minutes? Lauren, I think we got off on the wrong foot. I'd love to clear the air and maybe talk about some future opportunities. Let me know if you're open to a chat. I'm proud of what you've built. Proud. Like he had anything to do with it. I forwarded the email to Priya with a single sentence. Guess who came crawling? She replied with a popcorn emoji. The next week, I walked into a networking event where I was scheduled to speak on a panel about women in business. As I made my way through the crowd, shaking hands and smiling, I saw him. Derek. He was standing near the back of the room, nursing a drink, watching me. His face held that same smug confidence he always wore, only this time, it looked a little cracked around the edges. After my panel, he approached. Lauren, he said, extending a hand. It's good to see you. I didn't shake it. He cleared his throat, awkwardly lowering his hand. I just wanted to say, you've done incredible work. Really? I looked him in the eye. Is that why you're here? To congratulate me? He shifted uncomfortably. I mean partially. But also, I think there might be an opportunity for us to collaborate. Argonne and Chase is expanding. We're looking to bring in new talent. Maybe even acquire smaller firms that have proven themselves. Ah, there it was. He didn't want to congratulate me. He wanted to buy me. I smiled, polite but sharp. You mean my firm? He nodded. Look, I know things got tense before. But let's be honest, you're good, but running a business is a whole other beast. It gets lonely. Hard. And we've got infrastructure, support, benefits. You wouldn't have to do it all alone. I stepped a little closer, lowering my voice. You're right, Derek. It is hard. But I built this from scratch, with no support, no safety net, and certainly no smirking boss standing in my way. And I've doubled revenue every quarter since I started. His jaw tightened. I leaned in, just a little. Tell you what, you want to collaborate? You can hire me as your consultant. Triple my old salary. Non-negotiable. He blinked, stunned. And I walked away. Priya was waiting near the exit, trying to hide her grin. Was that who I think it was? Yep, I said, grabbing my coat. He wants to acquire us. She raised an eyebrow. Are we for sale? Not a chance. That night, back in my apartment-turned-office, I sat down and opened a fresh document. Altera expansion plan. If Derek thought this was my peak, He was about to be very disappointed. Because I wasn't just building a business. I was building a legacy. 2 weeks after Derek tried to collaborate, I got a DM on LinkedIn that made me sit back and reread it 3 times. Hi Lauren. This might be a little out of the blue, but I'm a senior strategist at Kellen Group. We've been following Altera's work. I was wondering if you'd be open to a conversation. Privately. Kellen Group. A direct competitor of Argonne and Chase. Bigger. Older. But lately not quite as nimble. We scheduled a call, and the woman on the other end, her name was Marissa, didn't waste time. I'm going to level with you, she said. We've lost 2 pitches to you in the last month. Our team can't stop talking about how sharp your strategies are. And frankly, I'm impressed. We're interested in bringing you on as a consultant for a campaign we've been struggling with. I blinked, stunned. You want to hire me to help you beat my own clients? She laughed. Not exactly. Different market. Different stakes. But same brilliance. You've built a rep, Lauren. People are noticing. It felt surreal. Firms that once saw me as just another junior strategist were now treating me like a secret weapon. Within a week, I had a contract in hand and a check bigger than my entire annual salary at Argonne and Chase. I used part of that money to do something symbolic. I upgraded from the IKEA desk to a proper office space. Nothing huge, just 2 rooms and a shared kitchen in a mid-rise downtown. But to me, it felt like a palace. Priya came with me the day we got the keys. Think we'll fill this place? She asked, spinning slowly in her chair wide-eyed. Give me 6 months, I said. Turns out I needed only 3. By that summer, Altera had hired 3 more people. An account manager named Liz, a creative director named Cam, and a part-time CFO who was worth every penny. We were no longer a scrappy duo running campaigns out of a 1-bedroom. We were a team. And the clients kept coming. We landed a regional bank looking to rebrand, a women-led startup that wanted a campaign with heart, and a legacy nonprofit that needed help reaching Gen Z donors. Each pitch became sharper, tighter, more confident. But even as we grew, I refused to forget where this started. Every quarter, I set aside time to revisit our values doc, the messy Google Sheet Priya and I created during a caffeine-fueled brainstorm session at 2 a.m. It had things like, no fake praise, real feedback only, and no one works past 7 unless they want to. We made a promise. No one here would ever feel like I did at Argonne and Chase. Undervalued, unseen. Then one day, we got a new lead from our website. A contact form submitted by none other than Derek's former assistant. She'd quit, apparently, and wanted to join us. I took her out for coffee. She sat across from me, hands wrapped around her cup, eyes tired but alive. I watched what they did to you, she said. I saw how they used your work and never gave you credit. And when I saw that article, I realized I didn't want to be part of that place anymore. If you're hiring, I'll start at the bottom. I just want to work somewhere that doesn't make me feel small. I hired her on the spot. Not because I needed another assistant, but because I remembered exactly what that moment felt like. When you realize you're meant for more. When you decide that adorable is the last insult you'll ever accept. And when you finally get to choose who sits at the table with you. The article had been out for about 2 months when the email from Forbes landed in my inbox. I thought it was spam. Subject line: 30 under 30 nominee confirmation. I stared at it for a full minute, then clicked it open. And there it was, my name. Nominated under the Marketing and Media category. They wanted a headshot, a short bio, and proof of impact. I didn't cry. I just sat there, completely still, letting the weight of it settle in. I thought back to the girl who stood in that glass office while her boss laughed at her. I remembered how my fingers trembled when I walked out of the building. I remembered how it felt to hit rock bottom. Alone, scared, furious. Now here I was, about to be featured as a woman shaping the future of marketing. I submitted everything that afternoon. That night, I took my team out for drinks. We didn't talk about the nomination. We talked about Cam's cat escaping during a client Zoom, about Priya's latest campaign that went viral, about Liz's wedding plans. It felt normal. Like we weren't a group of underdogs anymore. We were professionals. A family, almost. A week later, I got a call. From my dad. We hadn't spoken much since I left Argonne and Chase. He'd always wanted me to follow a safe path. Don't ruffle feathers, he used to say. Keep your head down. You'll get your turn. But this time, his voice was quiet. Different. I saw the article, he said. You made us proud. I didn't expect that. Not after years of telling me to settle down, to stop pushing so hard, to stop being so emotional about everything. So I just said, thanks. Because even if it came late, it mattered. 2 days after that, someone else reached out. Not Derek. Not another firm. Someone I hadn't thought about in years. My old college roommate, Erin. We drifted after graduation. She landed a job quickly. I went into the trenches. Now she was reaching out with a simple line. I saw your name on Forbes. Do you remember our plan? I laughed out loud. Our plan. Freshman year, we'd stayed up one night planning the agency we'd launch someday. We even named it Pulse. We never followed through. Life happened. Fear happened. But now she was serious. I left my job, she told me when we finally got on a call. Toxic. Soul-crushing. I want to start again. I thought, if anyone knows how, it's you. I didn't hesitate. Come meet the team. She joined a month later as a consultant. And that's when it really hit me. This wasn't just a comeback story anymore. It wasn't just about proving Derek wrong. It was about becoming the kind of leader I'd wished I had. Every person on my team, every client, every late-night call, every nervous intern I mentored, was a chance to do it differently. To lead with respect. To build something that wasn't just profitable, but good. We weren't just taking market share. We were changing the game. And I wasn't done yet. It was an ordinary Tuesday, but something about it felt different. I was in the new office, sunlight pooling across the hardwood floor, the windows open just enough to let in the sounds of the city. The scent of strong coffee mixed with printer ink and fresh paint. Cam was at his desk scribbling storyboards, Priya was on her second call of the morning, and Liz was laughing with a client on Zoom like they were old friends. I sat back in my chair and looked around. This was it. This was the table I had dreamed of back when I was a nobody, clutching a laptop in the corner of a soulless office, trying to pretend that Derek's words didn't sting. Back when adorable made my throat tighten and my hands shake. Now, the only thing that tightened was my focus. We'd just onboarded 2 new clients. One of them a global nonprofit whose campaigns I'd once studied in college with awe. The other, a lifestyle brand led by a woman who'd turned down every agency before ours. I want a team that listens, she had said. One that knows the power of subtlety. That's why I came to Altera. And here we were. It didn't mean I stopped feeling like I had something to prove. It just meant the proving ground looked different now. It meant the stakes were higher, but so was the view. That afternoon, we hosted a small panel in our new space. We called it Voices at the Table. A casual roundtable for women in leadership to talk about being underestimated, dismissed, ignored, and what we did with it. I was the final speaker. I didn't want to talk at first. Not because I didn't have anything to say, but because I was afraid it would sound like bragging. Like I was standing too far from the girl who once cried in a stairwell after Derek called her a bold little thing. But I knew the room needed to hear the truth. The real version. Not the curated success story with a bow on top. So I stood. I left because of a smirk. I began, my voice steady but low. I asked for a raise. I asked for recognition. And my boss laughed. Not because it was funny, but because he genuinely thought I was asking for something I didn't deserve. I paused, letting it hang. That moment didn't break me. It defined me. I walked out. Not because I had a plan. I didn't. I had debt. I had fear. I had no safety net. But I had belief in myself and in what I knew I could build. I glanced at Priya in the back. She gave a tiny nod, her eyes shining. I didn't steal clients. I didn't burn bridges. I just told the truth. And the people who trusted my voice followed. I told them about the cold pizza nights, the 3 a.m. panics, the first time I hired someone with money I wasn't sure I'd make back. I told them about Derek's second email, the one where he called me impressive. I told them how I didn't answer it. I didn't build Altera to prove Derek wrong, I finished. I built it to prove me right. The room was quiet. Then came the applause. Not polite, not performative. It was slow and deliberate, like they were clapping for every version of themselves that had ever been made to feel small. Afterward, a girl, maybe 22, maybe younger, approached me, her hands trembling a little as she gripped her notebook. "I want to start something," she said. "But I don't know if I'm enough." I smiled, seeing so much of myself in her eyes. "You are," I said. "You just haven't had the chance to prove it to yourself yet." She blinked, and I knew she'd remember that moment. The same way I still remember the first time someone believed in me. Me believing in me. 2 days later, I got a message from a recruiter. Argonne & Chase had laid off 12 people, including Derek. The irony didn't hit me like I thought it would. There was no satisfaction. No thrill. Just a strange, quiet peace. I didn't need to win against Derek. I'd already won with everyone who chose me. With every person at my table who never again had to explain their worth. With every voice I made space for. That was the legacy. And I was just getting started.